2. Alex stood in the middle of our cozy living room, thoughtfully looking at the stack of DVDs on the coffee table. My wife Emily fluttered around the room, arranging pillows and blankets for our upcoming movie marathon. "Honey, what do you think we should watch today?" she asked, adjusting the couch cushions. Maybe we should start with the classics. Pretty Woman, Breakfast at Tiffany's, I suggested, flipping through the discs. "Great choice," Emily smiled. "Mom loves those movies. By the way, she promised to drop by later and join us." I nodded, remembering our last meeting with Jennifer, Emily's mom. Despite the age difference, we always found common topics for conversation and got along great. Emily continued to bustle around the living room, placing candles and turning on floor lamps to create a cozy atmosphere. I couldn't help but admire her. Even in home clothes and without makeup, she looked amazing. The doorbell rang, and Emily hurried to open it. A moment later, Jennifer walked into the living room with a large bag in her hands. "Hi, darlings," she exclaimed, hugging her daughter. "I brought some treats for our movie night." "Mom, you always think of everything," Emily smiled, helping Jennifer unload the bag. I walked over to greet Jennifer and was struck by how good she looked. Despite her age, she had retained her slender figure and radiant smile. "Alex, good to see you," she said, hugging me tightly. She smelled of expensive perfume and freshness, and I felt a slight dizziness. "I'm glad to see you too, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us," I replied, trying to keep my composure. The three of us started setting the table, arranging plates of snacks and filling wine glasses. The atmosphere was relaxed and friendly. We joked and anticipated a pleasant evening. When everything was ready, we settled on the couch in front of the big TV screen. Emily took the remote and pressed the play button, and the first movie began. As the melodramatic plot of Pretty Woman unfolded on the screen, we sipped wine and commented on what was happening. Emily and Jennifer occasionally sniffled at particularly touching moments, while I, as befits a man, remained unperturbed. "Ah, Richard Gere was such a handsome man in his youth," Jennifer sighed, smoothing a lock of hair. "I've always liked men of his type, stately, self-confident, with good manners." "Yes, he is definitely good," Emily agreed, snuggling up to me. "But my Alex is no worse. Right, honey?" I smiled and kissed my wife on the top of her head. However, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that Jennifer looked at me kind of strangely, and a chill ran down my spine. The next movie was Breakfast at Tiffany's. We all immersed ourselves in the atmosphere of 1960s New York and followed the twists and turns of the main character's relationship. Somewhere in the middle of the movie, Emily started nodding off. She was tired after a long work week and wasn't getting enough sleep. "Honey, if you want, go lie down in the bedroom," I suggested, noticing her yawn. No, I'll finish watching," Emily stubbornly replied, but after a few minutes her eyes closed and she peacefully snored on my shoulder. Jennifer and I exchanged glances and smiled. I carefully laid Emily's head on a couch pillow and covered her with a blanket. "The poor thing is completely exhausted," Jennifer whispered, looking sympathetically at her sleeping daughter. "Yes, she needs rest," I agreed. "Maybe we should take a break. I wouldn't mind stretching my legs and making some coffee." "Good idea." Jennifer nodded and also got up from the couch. We went to the kitchen, trying not to make noise so as not to wake Emily. While I messed with the coffee machine, Jennifer took out the dessert she had brought from the fridge, strawberry cheesecake. Looks amazing," I said, looking at the appetizing piece. "Thank you, it's my signature recipe," Jennifer smiled, cutting 2 pieces and transferring them to plates. We sat down at the kitchen table across from each other and started on dessert, washing it down with fragrant coffee. The conversation smoothly flowed from discussing movies to more personal topics. "You know, Alex, I've always admired your relationship with Emily," Jennifer said thoughtfully, looking at me over her cup. "You're such a harmonious couple. It's immediately obvious that you love each other." "Thank you, Jennifer," I smiled. "Emily and I are truly happy together, although, of course, we have disagreements, like everyone else." "That's normal. There are always ups and downs in relationships," she nodded. "The main thing is to be able to listen and respect each other." I grunted in agreement, sipping my coffee. Talking with Jennifer was surprisingly pleasant and frank. We touched on many topics that we hadn't talked about before. "What about you, Jennifer?" I asked, giving in to curiosity. If you don't mind me asking, why is such a beautiful and successful woman alone? Jennifer looked away for a moment, and I noticed a flash of sadness in her eyes. Oh, Alex, it's a long story, she sighed. Let's just say I've been unlucky in love. The men I dated turned out to be either unfaithful or emotionally immature. I felt a pang of sympathy. Looking at this gorgeous woman, it was hard to imagine that she had suffered from failed relationships. I'm sorry you had to go through that, I said sincerely, covering her hand with mine. Jennifer shuddered slightly at my touch, but didn't pull away. On the contrary, she squeezed my palm slightly and smiled. Thank you for understanding, Alex. You really are a special man. Her words and touch provoked a strange reaction in me. My heart started beating faster, and an incomprehensible feeling appeared in my stomach. I carefully removed my hand and cleared my throat, trying to pull myself together. I think it's time for us to get back to the movie, I said, getting up from the table. I don't want Emily to wake up and notice our absence. Yes, of course, Jennifer nodded, also standing up. We returned to the living room where Emily was still peacefully snoring on the couch. I sat down next to her and put my arm around her shoulders, while Jennifer settled into the armchair opposite. The movie continued, but my thoughts kept returning to our conversation in the kitchen. I felt a strange attraction to Jennifer that I hadn't noticed before, and judging by the looks I periodically caught her giving me, this attraction was mutual. The movie came to an end and the final credits crawled across the screen. I looked at the clock. It was already quite late. I think it's time to end our movie marathon, I said, gently stroking Emily's hair. I'll go put our sleeping beauty to bed. Let me help, Jennifer offered, getting up from the chair. Together we carefully lifted Emily into our arms and carried her to the bedroom. She muttered something in her sleep, but didn't wake up. After laying my wife on the bed and covering her with a blanket, Jennifer and I tiptoed out of the room and closed the door behind us. Finding ourselves in the hallway, we both hesitated for some reason. Thanks for your help, I said quietly, looking at Jennifer. In the semi-darkness, her eyes seemed even brighter and more alluring. You're welcome, she replied just as quietly, taking a step towards me. I'm glad we had such a nice talk today, Alex. Me too, I exhaled, feeling my heart pounding faster and faster. I don't know which of us reached for the other first, but the next moment our lips met in a kiss. It was like an electric shock that pierced my entire body. I hugged Jennifer around the waist, pulling her closer, and she ran her fingers through my hair. The kiss grew more passionate and heated. We pressed against each other as if wanting to dissolve in this embrace. Jennifer's hands slid under my shirt, caressing my skin, and I let out a muffled moan. At the edge of my consciousness, the thought pounded that we were doing something wrong, something forbidden, but the desire that flared up between us was stronger than the arguments of reason. Stumbling and not breaking our embrace, we made it to the guest bedroom. As soon as we closed the door behind us, we started feverishly tearing off each other's clothes. The kisses became more greedy, hands explored bare skin. We fell on the bed, unable to tear ourselves away from each other. Passion overshadowed everything else, leaving only an all-consuming desire. Our bodies moved in a single rhythm, driven by primal instinct and lust. It was like plunging into molten lava, scorching, dangerous, but incredibly alluring. Every touch, every kiss, every thrust gave incomparable pleasure. When a wave of ecstasy washed over us both, we moaned softly in unison. For a moment, the whole world ceased to exist, leaving only the two of us, intertwined as one. But the realization of what had happened followed the bliss. We lay side by side, breathing heavily and staring at the ceiling. Euphoria gradually gave way to feelings of guilt and shame. God, what have we done? Jennifer whispered, covering her face with her hands. I was silent, not knowing what to say. My thoughts were confused, and my heart was pounding out of my chest. How could I do this to Emily? How could I betray everything that was between us? This will never happen again, I said firmly, turning to Jennifer. We must forget what happened and pretend that nothing happened. You're right, she nodded, sitting up on the bed and fumbling for her clothes on the floor. It was a momentary weakness, a mistake. We can't destroy our family. We quickly got dressed, avoiding looking at each other. The tension in the room was palpable. "I'm going home," Jennifer said, heading for the door. "Tell Emily that I suddenly got a headache and decided not to stay the night." "Okay," I agreed, feeling relieved that she was leaving. After seeing Jennifer off, I returned to our bedroom with Emily. My wife was still sound asleep, unaware of my betrayal. Looking at her, so innocent and trusting, I felt a lump rise to my throat. I lay down next to her, hugged Emily, and closed my eyes, wishing to forget this evening like a bad dream. But I knew that the memories would haunt me for a long time to come. The sunlight streaming through the curtains woke me up the next morning. For the first few seconds, I couldn't understand what was wrong, and then the memories of last night came crashing down on me like ice water. Emily stirred beside me and opened her eyes. Seeing that I was already awake, she smiled and reached for a kiss. "Good morning, honey," she purred. "How did you sleep?" "Fine," I replied, trying to hide my state. "How about you? Did you get enough sleep?" "Yes, like a log," Emily laughed. "I don't even remember how I got to bed. You must have carried me in your arms, my hero." I smiled forcedly, feeling everything inside me clench with guilt. If only Emily knew what I was doing while she was sleeping. "Where's Mom?" Emily suddenly asked, looking around the room. "She was going to stay the night, wasn't she?" "She suddenly got a headache and decided to go home," I replied with the prepared phrase. "She didn't want to wake you up." "Oh, I hope she's okay," Emily worried. "I need to call her and find out how she's feeling." I nodded, wishing I could sink through the floor. Talking to Jennifer was the last thing I wanted to do right now. Emily and I got up, had breakfast, and went about our usual business. I did my best to act as if nothing had happened, but inside me, a hurricane of emotions was raging. All day I was out of sorts. I couldn't concentrate on work, constantly replaying the events of last night in my head. How could I have succumbed to temptation so easily? How could I have betrayed my wife, my family? The worst part was that some part of me didn't regret what had happened. The memories of the passion that had flared up between me and Jennifer stirred my blood and made me crave more. But I couldn't allow myself to even think about it. I loved Emily and didn't want to destroy our marriage. What happened with Jennifer was a mistake, a momentary weakness, and I had to do everything to make sure that mistake never happened again. Weeks went by, gradually turning into months. Life returned to its usual course, but my relationship with Emily changed. I felt guilty and dirty, unworthy of her love and trust. Emily noticed my strange behavior, but chalked it up to stress at work. She tried to support me, but I only withdrew into myself more, afraid that she would somehow find out the truth. We started talking less, making love less often. An invisible wall grew between us, and I didn't know how to break it down without confessing everything. Jennifer and I tried to avoid each other. At family gatherings and holidays, I did everything to avoid being alone with her. We communicated dryly and formally, like strangers. But sometimes I caught her looks, full of longing, regret, and hidden passion. And in those moments, I wanted to spit on everything and take her in my arms, to repeat what happened between us that night. However, I held back. For Emily's sake, for the sake of our family, I hoped that over time the pain and guilt would subside, and I would be able to live on as before. But the scar on my soul did not heal. I felt that the betrayal had forever changed me, made me worse as a person and as a husband. Sometimes I thought that the only way out was to confess everything to Emily and beg for forgiveness. But the fear of losing her was stronger than the pangs of conscience. I clung cowardly to the hope that I could bury this secret within myself and never let it surface. Years passed, and Emily and I grew further apart. Eventually, she couldn't take it anymore and filed for divorce, saying that she no longer recognized me and couldn't live like this. I didn't try to hold her back, realizing that I had destroyed our marriage myself. Watching her leave my life, I felt pain and relief at the same time. After the divorce, it took me a long time to come to terms with myself, to learn to live alone again. And only after a while did I dare to meet with Jennifer and talk frankly. We sat in a cafe reminiscing about the past and discussing the present. It turned out that all these years she had also been tormented by guilt and regret over what had happened. We asked each other for forgiveness again for the pain we had caused. As we parted, we hugged as old friends. I realized that I still loved her, but in a different way now, without passion and obsession, but simply as a close person. I realized that my mistake, made many years ago, had forever changed my life. But now I was ready to accept the consequences of my actions and move on, trying to become better. And even though uncertainty awaited me ahead, I knew that I would cope. After all, the worst was already behind me, which meant that I could start everything from a clean slate. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.